Every global crisis seems to arrive suddenly. The collapse appears overnight. Markets crash. Nations panic. Systems fail, and people ask the same question every time. How did no one see this coming? But history suggests something unsettling. The biggest turning points in civilization rarely appear without warning. Before the fall of empires, before wars that reshaped the world, before economic catastrophes that changed generations, there is often a signal. Quiet, subtle, almost invisible. A pattern that appears again and again across centuries. The question is not whether the signal exists. The question is far more disturbing. What if the signal has already appeared again, and most of the world simply refuses to see it? For thousands of years, ancient civilizations believed that history moves in patterns rather than random events. The rise and fall of kingdoms. Periods of peace followed by sudden instability. Moments where societies grow confident, powerful, and comfortable. Just before everything begins to crack. This idea is not just philosophical. It appears repeatedly in ancient texts, historical records, and even biblical prophecy. Again and again, these writings describe a moment before crisis, a shift in behavior, culture, and power that acts like a warning light before the system overloads. Not a prediction of a specific event, but a pattern that signals something larger is beginning to move beneath the surface. In the Bible, one of the most striking descriptions of these warning patterns appears in the words attributed to Jesus when speaking about the final stages of history. He described a period when nations would be anxious, societies divided, and the world filled with a strange mixture of technological progress and deep uncertainty. Not a single catastrophic event, but a series of disturbances building pressure beneath the surface of global stability. Wars and rumors of wars, economic tension, natural disruptions, political fragmentation. The description is not presented as a sudden apocalypse, but as something far more unsettling. The slow and visible build-up toward a breaking point. Historians have noticed something similar when studying past civilizations. Before the fall of the Roman Empire, there were decades of political instability, economic strain, and social division. Before the First World War, the global system looked strong on the surface, yet alliances were fragile and tensions were rising everywhere. Before the Great Depression, financial markets were booming. But beneath the prosperity, there were hidden vulnerabilities in the global economy. Again and again, history shows the same pattern, a period of expansion, confidence, innovation. And then, quietly, the signals begin to appear. One of the most interesting parts of this pattern is that the warning signs rarely look dramatic when they first emerge. They look ordinary, small political conflicts, economic imbalances, cultural shifts, the rise of new technologies that reshape communication and power. These developments seem unrelated at first, but over time they begin to connect, forming a network of pressure points inside the global system. When historians look backward, the pattern becomes obvious. But while it is happening in real time, most people cannot see it. Ancient prophets often described this phenomenon using symbolic language. They spoke about watchmen who stand on the walls of a city, observing the horizon for danger long before the population below becomes aware of it. The role of the watchman was not to predict every detail of the future. It was simply to recognize the signs that something large was approaching. In that sense, prophecy sometimes functions less like fortune-telling and more like pattern recognition, a warning based on observing how human societies behave when they approach moments of extreme transformation. When we compare those ancient descriptions with modern history, the similarities are difficult to ignore. Periods before major global crises often share certain characteristics. Economic systems become deeply interconnected, which creates incredible prosperity but also hidden fragility. Political power becomes concentrated and contested at the same time. Information spreads faster than ever before, increasing awareness but also amplifying fear and confusion. Technology accelerates faster than societies can adapt to it, and cultural division begins to widen within nations themselves. These signals do not guarantee that catastrophe will occur immediately, but they indicate that the system has entered a volatile stage. A stage where a single unexpected event can trigger a chain reaction across the world. In complex systems theory, this moment is sometimes called critical instability. The point where a system looks stable on the surface but is actually extremely sensitive to disruption. The next crisis may not be the cause of the collapse. It may simply be the spark that ignites the pressure already building beneath everything. What makes this pattern even more fascinating is that ancient prophetic texts often focus less on the event itself and more on the atmosphere that surrounds it. They describe a world filled with anxiety and anticipation, where people sense that something is wrong but struggle to explain what it is. A period when information floods society but clarity becomes harder to find. A time when power structures begin to shift rapidly, leaving institutions scrambling to maintain control. In other words, the signal appears not only in politics or economics, but in the collective psychology of humanity. In modern times, the speed of global communication has amplified this phenomenon dramatically. For the first time in history, billions of people can watch global events unfold in real time. Every conflict, every financial shock, every political crisis spreads instantly across the planet. This creates a strange paradox. Humanity has more information than ever before, yet uncertainty feels deeper than at any previous point in modern history. It is as if the entire world is connected to the same nervous system, reacting simultaneously to signals of instability. Some researchers who study historical cycles believe that large civilizations move through predictable phases, lasting decades or even centuries. Periods of growth are followed by periods of strain. Institutions weaken, trust erodes, new technologies disrupt existing power structures, and eventually the system either adapts or fractures. These cycles are not controlled by any single nation or leader. They emerge from the collective behavior of billions of people interacting within the same global structure. If this interpretation is correct, then the hidden signal that appears before every global crisis is not a single event. It is a convergence of patterns. Economic stress combined with political tension, rapid technological change combined with cultural instability, rising power struggles between nations combined with internal division within societies. Each signal alone might seem manageable, but when they begin appearing at the same time, history shows that the probability of major disruption increases dramatically. This is where the idea of a hidden signal becomes both fascinating and unsettling, because once you understand the pattern, it becomes difficult not to see it everywhere. Rising geopolitical tensions between powerful nations, economic systems under unprecedented pressure, rapid advances in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and surveillance technology transforming the balance of power, increasing distrust in institutions that once provided stability. None of these developments alone proves that a global crisis is inevitable, but together they form a pattern that looks strangely familiar to anyone who studies the past. Ancient biblical writings often describe the final stages of history, using imagery that emphasizes awakening rather than destruction. The idea is that humanity moves through cycles of warning and response. Signals appear. Watchmen notice them. Some people ignore them. Others begin to ask deeper questions about the direction civilization is heading. The signal itself does not force humanity into catastrophe. Instead, it exposes the vulnerabilities that already exist within the system. In that sense, the hidden signal, before every global crisis, may actually serve a purpose. It acts as a moment of clarity before transformation, a period where the future is still uncertain and choices still matter. A warning light that something in the structure of society needs to change before the pressure becomes impossible to contain. Whether civilizations respond wisely to that signal, or ignore it until it is too late, is what ultimately determines the course of history. Today, many experts from completely different fields are quietly discussing the same question. Economists talk about systemic risk in global finance. Political analysts warn about the instability of shifting power balances between nations. Technologists debate the long-term consequences of artificial intelligence and digital surveillance. Climate scientists warn about environmental tipping points. None of these warnings exist in isolation. They form a web of signals, pointing toward the same uncomfortable reality. The modern world is entering a period of extraordinary transformation. The most fascinating part of this entire pattern is that people living inside these moments rarely recognize them as historical turning points. Life continues. Markets open every morning. Governments hold elections. Technology advances. Daily routines continue as normal. Yet beneath that normality, invisible forces begin to rearrange the structure of the world. By the time the turning point becomes obvious, the signal that warned about it has already been present for years, so the real question may not be whether the signal exists. History suggests that it always does. The deeper question is whether humanity can recognize the pattern while it is still unfolding, rather than only understanding it when historians look back decades later. Because the signal before every global crisis is not hidden by secrecy. It is hidden by familiarity. The warning signs appear slowly, woven into everyday events, until people stop noticing them altogether. And that brings us to the most unsettling possibility of all. If history truly moves in cycles, if ancient prophetic patterns reflect real behaviors of civilizations, and if the signals before crisis always appear quietly before the collapse becomes visible, then the most important signal in human history may not belong to the past. It may belong to the present. And if that is true, then the question is no longer whether the signal exists. The question is whether you are seeing it now.